Let's make one thing clear from the start. The harder you try to fit in, the further you drift from yourself. And the more you talk, the emptier you become. I'm not the one saying this. It was said by a man who lived in a barrel, urinated in public, and mocked the world while the world tried to understand him. Diogenes, a philosopher who wasn't looking to please, fit in, or much less be remembered. And yet, here we are, centuries later, talking about him. Why? Because while most people struggled to be part of the crowd, he chose to be a spectator of collective stupidity. And you know what he said? That the more sociable you are, the stupider you become. Does that sound exaggerated? Perfect. Because that means this video is for you. Because you, who laugh even though you don't understand the joke, you, who greet others even when you don't want to, you, who pretend interest out of fear of not being accepted. You have fallen into the most perverse trap of our era: social hyperconnectivity. And the worst part is that you don't even notice it. Every word you say to belong, every silence you choose to avoid discomfort, every gesture, every laugh, every damn Instagram story is nothing but bricks in the invisible prison you have built around your mind. Want the truth? You no longer know who you are when no one is watching. What if I told you that all that noise, all those friendships, all those gatherings aren't bringing you closer to wisdom, but pushing you into the abyss of emotional stupidity? I'm not talking about the stupidity of not knowing how to add fractions. I'm talking about true stupidity, the one that makes you forget the essential, the one that forces you to betray yourself with a smile, the one that turns you into a slave of the superficial, of the group, of the what will they say. Have you ever wondered why, when you're alone, you feel strange, uncomfortable, empty? Because you're not used to inhabiting your mind without the echo of others. You don't know how to think without borrowed opinions. You don't know how to decide without looking around. And that's no coincidence. Society doesn't want strong individuals. It wants functional pieces. And for a piece to work, it needs to fit in. And to fit in, you have to smooth your edges. And do you know what those edges are? Your judgment, your identity, your truth. But let's go further. Why do you think the smartest people in history were loners? Coincidence? I don't think so. Because thinking deeply requires silence, and silence is at war with sociability. In this video, you won't find advice to be more liked by others. I'm not going to teach you how to be more charismatic, or have social skills, or stand out in groups. On the contrary, I'm going to tell you why all that can be the most refined form of self-betrayal, because sometimes being the life of the party is the price you pay for not having your own soul. Diogenes didn't hate people, he just despised the farce. He knew that where there is too much word, there is little truth. Where there is too much company, there is little judgment. And he didn't say it from the comfort of an armchair, nor from a university lectern. He said it living like an animal, but thinking like a god. So tell me, to what extent are your relationships truly yours, and not a reflection of your fear of being alone? This video is going to shake you. It's not comfortable, it's not kind. But if you stay, maybe you'll begin to see sociability for what it really is, a disguise. One we all wear, and few dare to take off. Get ready, because from this moment on, you're going to start distrusting every conversation, every shared laugh, every automatic gesture, and not because they're fake, but because you don't know how much of yourself you are sacrificing in them. This isn't misanthropy, it's lucidity. It's a journey to the most uncomfortable part of the human condition, the fear of isolation, and how that fear slowly turns you into one more copy of the system you said you wanted to question. Because the more sociable you are, the stupider you can become. And if that bothers you, it's because deep down you know there's some truth here. Welcome. This is not a video, it's a fracture. And what you decide to do with it will no longer be with the voice of others in your head. It will be with your own. Finally. Ready to lose friends and gain clarity? Perfect. Then don't leave. Because what comes next isn't a lesson, it's a mirror. One that not everyone is prepared to look into. Do you know the deepest problem of all this? That most don't even realize they're being domesticated. That's the scariest part. You don't need shackles when the subject kneels on their own. You don't need a cell if the mind prefers the crowd to freedom. And here comes the next enemy, a quieter one, more elegant, more insidious: social validation. It's the drug no one admits to consuming. No one tells you, "I want to be approved." No, that would be too honest. Instead, they post, smile, dress a certain way, adopt opinions like someone puts on a shirt, just to fit into a mold they don't even question. Validation isn't a compliment, it's an addiction. And that's where stupidity begins to seem sensible. Because to be validated, you have to be understandable, predictable, comfortable. And nothing is more comfortable for others than someone who thinks like them. Validation doesn't require intelligence. It requires conformity. And the more you seek it, the more you diminish your ability to think for yourself. Because real thinking, deep thinking, is dangerous. It distances you from the group. It makes you strange. It turns you into an outcast. And what does a human do when they start to feel out of place? They give in. They adapt. They give up their inner voice to not lose external approval. And right there, right then, is when the stupidity begins. The mind cannot be sharp when it's waiting for applause. Critical thinking isn't born in applause, it's born in conflict. But conflict scares. Because it's uncomfortable. Because it's lonely. Because it forces you to see yourself without social makeup. Look around you. Observe people. Notice how they laugh in unison. How they repeat ideas without digesting them. How they defend causes they don't understand. Just because they're trendy. Do you think that's intelligence? It's not. It's obedience with a smile. And here comes the hardest part of all. The smarter you are, the more at risk you are of becoming stupid, if you choose to live to be accepted. Because real intelligence implies dissidence. It implies stepping aside. It implies saying what no one wants to hear. But that's not rewarded. That's punished. How? With society's favorite weapon, symbolic isolation. They no longer exile you physically. Now they silence you with indifference, with soft cancellations, with that uncomfortable void that appears when you don't follow the script. And most can't stand it. They'd rather get lost in the crowd than face the desert of authenticity. Want brutal proof of this? Watch what happens when someone in a group expresses an unpopular opinion. You see it on their face. Doubt, self-correction, trying to soften it. They know they're touching a nerve. And they're not afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of being alone. That's the point. We no longer live in fear of error. We live in fear of isolation. And you know who didn't have that fear? Diogenes. Because he understood that freedom isn't doing whatever you want, but not fearing to be alone with your convictions. So, tell me, how much of what you think is truly yours? How many ideas have you taken simply because they surrounded you? How many times have you kept quiet about what you thought to not upset a group you don't even respect? Validation is the most sophisticated form of submission. And you think you're communicating, but in reality, you're giving up. You think you're sharing your thoughts, but you're just serving a menu adapted to the group's taste. Intelligence isn't measured by what you know, but by what you're willing to defend even when no one else does. But that has a price. The price of exclusion, judgment, whispers behind your back. And here the trap is revealed. Sociability is not neutral. It's not just a way of living together. It's a net designed to soften the edges of the mind, to make you more acceptable, Yes, but also more manageable. That's why it's so damn hard to be brilliant and social at the same time. Because part of you is always in conflict. The part that wants to question and the part that wants to belong. And when that conflict becomes unbearable, you choose comfort. And that's where stupidity begins. Not stupidity of ignorance, but stupidity of not wanting to know more than necessary to maintain balance. That's what kills lucidity. Not error, but polite conformity. The diplomatic smile, the right phrase at the right time. The killer of thought is artificial consensus. And yet you keep seeking it, because we prefer a shared lie to a solitary truth. Do you realize? This video isn't about being antisocial, it's about mental integrity, about rescuing your thought before the group dilutes it. And no, it's not about hating others. It's about not depending on them to know who you are. Because the more you depend on the reflection of others, the blurrier you become. So tell me again. Are you thinking, or are you repeating? Are you being you, or are you being what they expect from you? If you've come this far, congratulations. Because that means something inside you hasn't been fully domesticated yet. But the real work starts now. This isn't a conclusion, it's a threshold. And what you cross to the other side depends only on you. The world is full of sociable, pleasant, diplomatic minds. Empty. Don't be one more. Diogenes didn't live in a barrel out of poverty. He lived there because there was no room for his mind in a society of happy slaves. And you? Where are you going to live from now on? And just when you think you've awakened, you discover another layer, a deeper one, more perverse, harder to strip away, because there is something even more dangerous than external validation, something better camouflaged, something disguised as introspection, but in reality is a virus dressed as virtue, socially assisted self-deception. Yes, you heard that right. You don't just deceive yourself, you do it with applause, with likes, with approving looks that reinforce your narrative, even if it's rotten inside. Because the more sociable you become, the more versions of yourself you have to maintain. And there comes a point when you no longer know which one is real. It's like an endless performance. And every stage, the office, the group of friends, the partner, your family, requires a different character. Everyone applauds the actor, but no one knows the author. Not even you. Human beings have replaced the mirror with the audience. You no longer look at yourself to know yourself. You look to please. You look to see if you come across well on camera. And each time you do, your reflection becomes another mask. One more among many. All carefully molded to survive in this approval circus we call society. But here's the truly chilling part. You get used to it. Not just to lying, but to living inside the lie. And since everyone does it, no one feels strange. Since everyone smiles, no one suspects the pain. Since everyone celebrates the same, no one questions if it's worth it. That's what sociability achieves when it becomes the rule. It standardizes thought, kills dissidence, sterilizes the soul. And then the inevitable happens. You become predictable, automated, an algorithm of yourself. You no longer think, you just react. You no longer decide, you just do what's expected. Free will becomes a pretty myth, like unicorns or meritocracy. Look at your decisions. How many of them did you really make? How many came from you, without an invisible social voice conditioning your choice? The job you chose, the lifestyle, the ideas you repeat, even how you manage silence. What part of all that is authentically yours? See where this is going? The more sociable you are, the more echoes you carry inside. And the more echoes inside, the less room there is for your voice. That's the intelligence that slowly erodes, not by blows, but by compliments. Not by violence, but by soft norms and sweet expectations. They tame you with approval, and you happily hand over control. You don't even notice the process, because there's no pain, only comfort. And do you know what brilliant minds do when they can't stand that noise anymore? They flee. They isolate. Not out of hate, but for mental hygiene. Because understanding the world too much is toxic when you can't breathe without pleasing it. That's why geniuses leave. That's why thinkers withdraw. Because social mediocrity doesn't allow depth. Because collective stupidity becomes aggressive when you question it. And because being too aware in a superficial environment is a sentence. They don't tell you this at school. You won't learn it in a course on effective communication. But there's a price for seeing clearly. The exile of the social soul. And yet, that exile is necessary. It's the only way to detox from so much stimulus, so much judgment disguised as conversation. Because yes, many times talking to others is just exchanging judgments disguised as interest. Questions that don't want answers, opinions that don't seek dialogue, just noise to avoid being alone with oneself. Want to know if you're contaminated? Do this brutal exercise. Spend a week without talking to anyone, without social media, without validation, without witnesses. Just you and your thought. If you feel like you're going crazy, then you're no longer alone. You're already lost. Because there, in that witnessless void, everything is revealed. Your dependencies, your contradictions, your masks. And if you're strong, if you endure, if you don't run back into the arms of noise, then you might start to think, really. And when you think, but think without filters, without an audience, without needing to be understood, then something strange happens. You stop being sociable and start being authentic. And of course, that annoys, because authenticity has sharp edges. It doesn't adapt well. It doesn't let itself be molded. It doesn't say what's expected. It doesn't smile out of obligation. It doesn't explain itself. It just is. And that scares. Because when someone appears who doesn't need the group to validate themselves, others feel the weight of their own weakness. That's the real reason why those who think differently are rejected. Not because they're wrong, but because their mere existence is an uncomfortable mirror for those who have already sold out. So don't be surprised if, after this video, you start to notice rejection. If suddenly some people distance themselves, if others laugh nervously when you speak from depth, you're breaking the tacit contract of social mediocrity, fake enough so that everyone is comfortable. But you no longer want to fake it. You can't anymore. And that, painful as it is the first step of lucidity. And now that you've come this far, now that you've felt something inside you stir with every word, let me take you a little further, to the last threshold. The place where almost no one arrives, because here there's no comfort. Here blaming others no longer works, nor hiding behind pretty phrases, nor saying, "This is just how I am." Here, in the end, there is only one thing left: brutal responsibility over your own mind. Because once you see, you can't unsee. Once you understand that you've been shaping your identity based on others, there's no going back. Do you know what's the scariest part of all this? That you can still choose to go back. You can close this video and keep playing the game. Pretend nothing happened. Go back to your group, your jokes, your masks. You can do it. And no one will know. But you will. You will know you betrayed yourself. And that awareness is either the beginning of your ruin or the point of your rebirth. There's no middle ground, no return to ignorance. Here, there are no promises of success, no magic formulas. The only thing I can tell you is this: the less you depend on being understood, the freer you will be. But don't confuse freedom with loneliness. It's not about being alone. It's about being whole without the need for external ornaments. It's about being able to look at the group, smile if you want, but never kneel again. Next time someone tells you that you should be more sociable, don't answer. Look at them in silence. Not to judge them, but to see how many versions of themselves they are holding at the same time. And then, if you still have strength, turn toward yourself. Ask, how much of me is still trapped in the gaze of others? When you find out, don't run away. Don't try to cover it up. Don't run back to the noise. Stay there, face it, strip it bare, name it, because what you can see, you can transform. And that's the part no one wants to take on. Everything you criticize outside is a projection of what you haven't yet resolved inside. So no, this video wasn't meant to give you answers. It was to take away the lies that prevent you from asking the right questions. And if I have succeeded, if something in all this has touched you, then I want to ask you one last thing. Leave me a sentence in the comments. Not just any sentence. I want you to write this. I prefer my uncomfortable truth over your empty acceptance. Do it not for me. Do it for you. To remind yourself that you saw something not everyone is ready to see. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. Not to follow trends, but to keep questioning. This channel isn't for crowds, it's for minds that don't settle. And now yes, I leave you with this. Get out of here. Turn everything off. Don't put on another video. Don't look for more noise. Walk, no music, no company, just you and your mind. And if after that you still want to return to the world, may it at least be with open eyes? Until next time. Or not. Maybe you no longer need anyone to tell you so.